This video is going to go over a few things that are extremely important in the sense that they are a practical way for you to get help as you are using your Linux system from the command line. Okay, so this should be something that you're going to refer to and use over and over and over during the course of this semester. So we are going to go and get started with the basic command line that we've been using all along. Okay, and I'm going to first recap a few methods to get help on some of the commands that the bash shell interpreter is susceptible to accept. And then once we're done with that, we're going to go as a general, most generic way to get help on a Linux or Unix system, which is the Manpages. And we are going to explore a few tools that allow you to use efficiently the Manpages. So let's start with the easiest thing. You have a command like ls, mkdir, okay? So first, if you type a command without parameter and the command requires parameter, it's going to tell you so. And it should redirect you directly to a way to get more information. So it's either it's going to display what it expects, okay, directly right there as an error message, or it's going to tell you, okay, I expect something, type blah 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 -- help for more information. So the -- help is the first line of tech support, I should say. You have a command, you don't know how it works. Most commands, the overwhelming majority of commands, are going to implement an option -- help, and I really recommend that if one day you have to implement your own program that acts like a command line tool, that you also honor that tradition, because this is really useful, obviously, right? So sometimes you have a -h option that is the same as -- help, but not always. Like for example, if you look at ls -h means something specific, okay? It's one of the options of ls that forces it to do the job of listing all the files and folders in the current working directory in a specific way, so it doesn't stand for help. But ls -- help, that one is generally recognized as I just need some information about how to use a command. So sometimes you are going to hear about usage. The term usage is going to be used to describe what happens when a command is telling you how you should be using it. Okay, so that little message here sometimes is referred to as a usage for the command mkdir. It's just like minimal information to get you started and remind you of the syntax that you have to use, like option first and then potentially one or more directory specified after the name mkdir and the options, okay? And this is a list of the most common options. So it's not a full documentation, it's just a little bit of help. So -- help, first line of tech support. Second option, we talked in a previous video about the fact that there were external commands in the shell, and there were internal commands, built-ins. So when you are dealing with built-ins, there's another way to get help. It's a help bash command. So the help bash command itself, if you just type it like that, is going to tell you all about every built-in command that is available in the bash shell. Help itself, if you do type help, type is also a built-in command, by the way. Help itself is a built-in command. So it's a built-in command in the bash shell to get help information about other built-in commands. So I could say help type, and it's going to be displaying me some basic usage information, very much like the kind of stuff that you find in external commands when you type, or even in built-in command when you type -- help, okay? It's going to tell me, okay, this is a command you asked me to provide help for. This is a syntax, so you can see here that we have optional parameters, all right? And then we have one name and optionally more names after the type. So I could say, for example, I want to type something like ls, which I know is external, and then pwd, mkdir, type itself, and help. Okay, so it would tell me ls is actually an alias. Okay, pwd is a built-in, mkdir is actually an external command, type is a built-in, help is a built-in. Okay, so I can use that to remind myself, how the syntax for a specific built-in command works. So -- help, then the help built-in command that only provides you help about other built-in commands of the bash shell. And then finally, the most generic way to get help on a Linux command line system, which is using Manpages. So the set of Manpages is pretty much a set of help files. These files are text files, plain text files, and they contain information about how to use just about everything that you can access from the Linux command line. Okay, so the whole set of those help files is referred to sometimes as the online manual. So online is not to be interpreted in the sense of, I have to go onto the web to access it. It's just, back then it was just, I'm using a terminal, I'm right here on my terminal, and online, as I use the terminal, I can access the help system. Okay, so a little bit confusing for people that have been born in the era of the web and have been using it for years and decades. But yes, that was the original meaning of having an online manual. That means a manual that is accessible readily right here from the session. Okay, so we have one central command to access manual pages, and easily enough it's called man, which stands for manual. So if I type man ls, for example, the man utility displays for me the manual page for the ls command. All right, and just as a quick remark, this manual page is displayed using the less utility, which we talked about in a previous video. So everything I said about the less utility here, about navigating, scrolling up and down in the file, searching for things like the word directory, etc., still applies. Okay, so you can go back to that video, and the way to quit a man page is to just hit the Q key. So everything we said about less applies here. So when we look at a man page, some man pages are relatively short, some are huge, like the man page for the bash command interpreter is actually quite huge. Okay, but all of the man pages are going to follow the same basic structure. So let me pull up here a space where I can do some cut and paste, and let me use this table that I borrowed from Halehan's Guide to Unix and Linux, a book which is referenced on our course website, and that I really recommend. Actually, it's a great introduction to Linux and Unix, goes in great amount of depth. So here what you can see is that table summarizes pretty much all the sections that you're going to find in a typical man page. Okay, so all man pages actually are going to have those sections. The name section, which is just the name and purpose of the command. The synopsis is kind of like a very short summary of the syntax of the command. Okay, so for example, let's go back and forth as we look at those sections to see how they look like actually in an actual man page. Okay, if I go back to my VM and I say man ls, here's the name section. So that's just, the name of the command and pretty much a very, very short one-sentence summary of its role. The synopsis specifies the syntax, so it tells you ls is used by typing ls, and then there is a command notation in those syntax. Okay, everything that is in between square bracket means it's optional, and everything that has ... after means it may be repeated, one or more times. So that means here the way to interpret this line is to say, to use the ls utility, you type ls followed by one or more, because there is ... option that are completely optional. So options are things like -a, -uppercase E, a, -04, all of those are explained here. And then followed by one or more file names. Okay, or even actually, 0 or more file names, because the file name here is optional, and then we say you can repeat that if you want. Okay, so you can have multiple names here, file or folder, could be absolute, could be relative, like everything we studied in the Linux command line interface for navigation in the file system. And that's it. Okay, that's really the synopsis. That's a short summary of how to use a command in terms of syntax, but it doesn't tell you what the options are, what they do, and stuff like that. This is what's covered in the next section, which is the description. Okay, so description starts generally by telling you a little bit more about what the command does in a less terse manner. Okay, and then it goes on to describe, okay, these are all the options that are available, and I'm going to show you their syntax. Okay, for example, here you see that when you use -- color, you have an optional part after it. We can tell it's optional because of the square bracket, and optionally we can do so dash dash color, or we can do dash dash colors followed by equal, immediately followed by equal, and followed by some information when, okay? And then the description, it tells you the when can be always, or auto, or never, okay? And so on and so forth. Sometimes there are options that are equivalent. So dash D, for example, is a shorthand version of dash dash directory, okay? So this is indicated here. And pretty much that's how you're going to really learn everything that any of the command can do for you. So again, like I explained in another video, the point is not to memorize by heart this information. The point is, when you learn about a new command, take a quick look at its man page. And quick look, yeah, that can take some time because some man pages are pretty big. And without, scrutinizing every single option, try to get a feel of what is possible with that command. Experiment a little bit with it, okay? And so later on, if you have a problem in an exam, in an exercise, or at your workplace, and it requires you to do something, you will have gained that experience with multiple commands about what they may be able to do. And when you need the details, then you dig back into the manual page. So from any Linux or Unix system, you type man, the name of your command, and now you can dig into the detail of how to do a specific task. Okay? So let's go back for a minute to that little table here. So we talked about name, synopsis, description. Environment. So we haven't talked about environment variable in the bash shell yet. We're going to talk about that very soon. It's the next step in using the bash shell, is knowing how to set environment variable, etc. But if your command is using any specific environment variable, it's going to be mentioned also in the man page. Okay, the man page is really there to tell you everything there is to know about the command. So if I type /environment while I'm on the man page, okay, I'm telling less that I want to look for this section of the man page. Fortunately here, I don't find anything. So if I scroll by hand, okay, I see that I have a description section, and I keep scrolling. Let me scroll page by page to go a little faster. And the next section is 04. So I skipped completely over the environment section for ls. Well, it's because in the ls command there's nothing really relevant. So if a section is not relevant to a given man page, it is simply skipped. But the 04 section, which is the next one in the order, and by the way, when the sections are present in the man page, they follow exactly that order. The 04 section, which is just there to tell you something about the people who developed that tool, okay? Well, the section is here. So 04 is there, reporting bugs. So this is indication on how to report bugs if you find any with the command, the copyright, and the see also section is also very important. This is generally where it's either going to point you to full documentation if it's available online, or further documentation, but sometimes it's going to also refer to other names of command and tell you that you can pretty much pull their man pages if you want. And these are commands that are related to the current manual page you are reading. Okay, so if we go back to the slide, we talked about 04s, we talked about see also, we talked about bugs. Actually, we talked about reporting bugs, but there can be a section bugs also that is there for warning you of non-bugs that have not been resolved. So unexpected behavior you should actually, well, expect, I guess. Diagnostic, possible error and warning, and then files. The ls command doesn't use any configuration file, but if we are looking at a command that reads, for example, a configuration file when it started to know how it should act, well, that is the name of that file, and its location of the file system will be specified in that section of the manual page. So that's something that you really need to get familiar with, okay? How manual pages are structured, what they look like, the kind of information they can give you, okay? This is really, really important. And that's pretty much the first thing that you have to learn about manual page. And then in the next videos, we're going to dig a little bit into how to use the tools that allow you to find relevant manual page and access specific version of the manual page that you need.